All right, so this little lecture is going to be on continental divergent boundaries. So what happens if that spreading zone, they call it a spreading zone here, because it's spreading apart, is underneath a continent. So with a continent, they are thicker. They're much older rock. This stuff can be 3-4 billion years sometimes, versus oceanic rock. Oceanic rock tends to be less than 1/4 billion years. A lot of times a lot newer than that. So continental rock is a lot older. The stuff is accumulated, and since the stuff is accumulated over time, it's thicker. And so we have a much thicker crust. It's felsic, which means it's going to be lighter material, and its density is 2.8. Remember the oceanic crust, the density is 3.2. My asthenosphere, my mantle, is going to be 4.5. So if you physically grab this, with the hand of God, just grab this and dragged it down in there, it wouldn't do anything. It would not stay down there. It would bob back up. Now it's not automatic. It's not going to be like a marshmallow. It's just going to explode out of the whole crust and such. It's going to slowly over time start to rise. Kind of interesting. If you look at the northern part of Canada, when you look at the Hudson Bay, and then also Scandinavia, that whole land is rising because it was actually pushed down. And so right now, because it doesn't want to be down there because it's not dense enough, it is actually bobbing back up. But it's on the geologic scale, and so we don't see it really happening with our little 80-year-old lifespan. It's just too short. But it is bobbing back up. Okay, back to this. So the spreading center occurs, and so we have a convection current, and it's pushing the two pieces on either side, and so those forces are literally ripping the continent. And once again, what ends up happening as it rips, it physically makes a crack. It literally rips the two parts apart. As it does this, what ends up happening is we physically get a valley. This is called a rift valley. Because it's rifting apart. And at the base of this rift valley, material starts to upweld, and so you get little volcanoes. And then it keeps ripping, it keeps ripping, it keeps ripping as these things go further and further and further apart. And then as it does that, it will literally rip the two pieces apart. I'm going to try something. Hang on. You wait several hundreds of thousands of years, and what ends up happening is it literally pulls apart. It's kind of like taffy. If you got like saltwater taffy and you slowly pull it apart, it gets all kind of like get real thin, and then eventually it'll snap. It does the exact same thing with the continents. And so because it's now so much of a pull that we've got real low, so the ocean has flooded in. So in between the two continental pieces, we now have an ocean or a sea, inland sea. And then at the base of that, we would have literally a rift valley. And then, of course, what's going to happen is at the base of that rift valley is volcanoes. And so we would see a whole line of little volcanoes. This is what's currently happening with Africa. So right now, Africa is ripping itself apart. If you looked at one side, you would have Africa. And then on the other side, you have Saudi Arabia. And this would be the Red Sea. So if you drained out the Red Sea, what you would have at the base of it would be a rift valley with little volcanoes right along it. So you'd start to get that mid-oceanic ridge as it's starting to do that. If you push this back then another couple million years, it'll look like this. So now what we would have is those two little pieces of continent. It used to be a big continent. Now we have two little pieces. Has ripped itself apart, and as it's ripped itself apart, it has formed a new crust. That new crust is going to be oceanic. Because it's new, it's going to be new. And then it's also thin. So it's going to be thinner because it hasn't had a chance to build up. And then we're going to have one piece going off one direction. We're going to have the other piece going off this direction. This is what's currently happening with the Americas. So North and South America are cruising off to the west, and then Africa and Europe are cruising off to the east, and they're literally splitting. And as they do that, once again, we get a rift valley, and then we get a oceanic ridge with little volcanoes, and then this whole thing is flooded with an ocean called the Atlantic Ocean, and it continues on. These little bits here will start to sink in because once again they don't have any roots, and so they would sink into the crust there. And slowly throughout time, North America and South America will get further apart from Europe and Africa, and the Atlantic Ocean is going to grow because of that. Okay, that is the first one.